What is your the beatings will continue until morale improves work story? Story 1. Not really me, but my brother who worked in same place before me. The company had a very bad way to handle finances, often would delay the payment on our end, but theirs were always on time. One day my brother got fed up and said they better pay them on time. They thought it was an empty threat and delayed. At the same moment the payment didn't get in, he and his co-workers all shut down the computers, took the phone off the lines and sat around. No one was to answer calls, emails, clients, schedule deliveries, and anything. The thing is, if they didn't work, things could still be solved, but their work was exclusively dependent on our end. If we didn't take the clients/deliveries, they couldn't transport or deliver anything. They got desperate and threatened to terminate everyone. But then how is the office gonna work with 0 people? Nor would it be legal, since it was the law here that every time the payment got delayed, the worker didn't have to work that extra day he's not being paid, or they would have to receive double for it because of the delay. Not even 2 hours in, everyone got paid. They always had the money. They just didn't care about the workers. Story 2. I worked at a place where the owner had cameras installed all over the place, ostensibly so that he can keep an eye out for shoplifters. The thing is, those cameras were installed everywhere, including the break room, and the only 2 places where there weren't any cameras were the bathrooms and the boiler room. So naturally, people would usually go for their lunch breaks outside, or if it rained, they'd go to the boiler room to grab a bite and have some semblance of privacy. I seldom ate lunch, so I usually decided to just hang out in the toilet cubicle, just scrolling on my phone. Naturally, that piques the ish-hole's interest, as he told us point blank that when he wasn't in for the day, he'd prop up his tablet or phone on the table in front of him, and he'd just watch what we were doing from home. And he demands to know what exactly I'm doing in there, as he saw on the cameras that I've been spending a lot of time in there, virtually my entire break. I told him that it really wasn't his concern. I had my 30 mins, and as long as I wasn't taking any extended breaks, that time was my own. That didn't sit well with him. A few days later, there I am on my break, in the stall, just standing and leaning on the partition and scrolling through Reddit on my phone, when I get a call from my boss. He says that he can see me standing there and demands to know why I haven't moved for 25 mins. I was flabbergasted, to say the least. Turns out, that unmitigated asshole installed a friggin' camera in the bathroom over the weekend, and the angle was such that you could see partway into the stall. I was livid and told him so, but his rationale was that he was concerned that I was doing drugs there. Needless to say, I handed in my notice the very next day. Story 3. Working in a department store, we had abysmal lost shoplifting numbers. Our managers read us the riot act every morning about making sure we spoke to every customer. Management believed that no thief would stick around once an employee had said hello to them. Kept an eye on the shoplifters' usual hiding spots, watched black suspicious-looking customers carefully, etc. However, we were explicitly forbidden from confronting anyone, even if we saw them stealing with our own eyes. All we could do was watch them and call for loss prevention over the radio. Our loss prevention guy worked 3 days a week, and on the days he actually worked, he never seemed to be around when we needed him. So every day we just had to smile and wave as brazen thieves walked out with armloads of merchandise. The GM decided that our loss numbers couldn't possibly be due to, actual shoplifting, but had to be from employee theft. So at the end of every shift, each employee had to have their bags searched by a manager before they could leave. They fired one employee and tried to have her arrested because a till she worked on came up a few dollars short a few times in a week, even though that employee was a floater who didn't have a dedicated register. She just happened to work on a few registers throughout the week that all came up $1.05 short. Funnily enough, there were a couple of thieves on staff, but they only stole from other employees. We weren't allowed to have locks on our lockers, so it was open season on employees' wallets. And we were still getting yelled at every day for our loss numbers. Story 4. I worked for a shitty security company, min wage, shit hours, shit benefits, terrible management, which all leads to a server staffing issue because everyone quits all the time. One location in particular was notoriously bad for staffing. They would hire people off the street, spend a few days to train them, and they would quit the next day because of how underpaid / overworked you are for a 12-hour shift. Because of this, they would never send an experienced guard to work there due to them knowing they would quit and cause even more staffing issues. I remember going to the location to fill a different duty, which was a cushy role, and meeting 5 new guards in a month. Generally, one would stay for a few months before finding a better gig. Well, when my summer position was closing up, my boss came to me with a great solution. I was offered the shit location. I asked for a raise since it's pretty rough work. He messaged me saying he was insulted, and that's not how things work around here, so I quit. Story 5. I worked for a company with an owner that was always trying to leverage his employees. He always seemed suddenly really generous at random. But there would always be a catch. For example, sure, you can all leave a couple hours early before the mega snowstorm hits, provided you come in a couple hours on Saturday. One employee died unexpectedly after a surgery. No life insurance, and the widow was left with significant funeral costs, etc. Owner decides to cover it all. A few weeks later, I overheard him talking to the lead sales guy, using him as a sounding board for an idea. Owner wants to offer all employees life insurance, where the company will pay half the premium. Because owner is so upset at the hardship faced by the deceased guy's spouse. That way, when the payout comes in case of a tragedy, the next of kin will have half the policy payout to cover the expenses. Yep, hey LF. Because of course the company was paying half the premium, so they'll be getting half the insurance money. I was possibly more upset that the lead sales guy was kissing owner's ass and complimenting the idea than I was that the scumbag owner came up with it. Story 6. One time it was approaching the end of business. A colleague and I had completely cleared our in trays and had nothing else to do, so we were sitting, chatting quietly, and running out the very last few minutes. The replacement shift turned up and a couple of guys were leaning against the wall a few feet away, clearly just wanting us to leave so they could sit down, log in, and start their shift. But my colleague and I, a little uptight, remained seated until the exact minute our shift ended, then left. The next morning, Fat Pat, the supervisor, came barging into the office saying, "Right, everyone into the meeting room. Yesterday there were too many people leaving a few minutes early." I said, "Pat, I presume me and my colleague are exempt from this meeting. We left at exactly the shift end." To which Fat Pat hiked his thumb over his shoulder and replied, "No, you two get in the meeting room as well. Yes, you stayed right until the end of the shift, but you weren't sitting totally upright in your chairs, and the passing manager saw it and thought it looked really unprofessional." I gave up then. It was a lousy job at the best of times, a crappy admin office bolted onto the side of a warehouse, with a toilet sticky with piss and with snot sticking onto its walls. But the idea of needing to be harangued for something, even if it was total bullshit, instead of being praised for setting a good example or just simply being left alone, was absolutely the last straw. I didn't go into the meeting room, and neither did my colleague. I actually handed in my notice very shortly after. Fuck that place. I was washing the memories of it off me for weeks. Story 7. Working at a certain big box retailer, the red one, when they switched up how they stocked shelves. Instead of dropping cases down the aisles while the store was closed, we'd be required to work off of a cart. We weren't even allowed to have extra carts to separate trash, backstock, etc. So every task was going to take longer. My team also effectively had its man-hours halved. We went from 5 to 6 people working 3 large food truck deliveries, plus 3 people working dry goods every day, to having 3 people come in to do both dry goods and the reefer, which now came 5x a week with a smaller load. Trying to push cold goods solo is also a huge time issue. You can't take stuff out of the coolers/freezers for more than 30 minutes at a time, which means working solo you hardly get anything done before you have to rotate it back. You end up spending 25% of your time shuffling stuff around instead of stocking shelves. Making matters worse, we'd identified this problem. We'd started working at a food truck as a group instead of each doing our own thing, because having 4 to 6 people we could tear through an entire pallet without going over the time limit. When we pointed out how that wasn't going to work due to the added inefficiency and our ability to count the reduced man hours, We were told that it was fine if we didn't finish. There'd be more hours in the afternoon to finish things. This was a lie. As soon as the switch was made, our ability to actually get our job done on time went away. Before we'd been finishing early some days. Unfinished work piling up in the back room made things even worse. It was also very clear that hours were short. The beating will continue came when we were first told that our not liking the new system was why we couldn't make it worse. Then we were outright accused of sabotage, none of which ever solved the problem of expecting someone to push at twice the standard rate they claimed to expect, then 3 other tasks, then zone our area to perfection. Perfection to be determined by management an hour later after customers had time to mangle it. Story 8. I'm a math teacher and have been teaching for 3 years. We had a whole new team for our grade level, and my principal put me down as the grade level leader. No biggie. We had someone called a math coach who was supposed to train the newbies and help them out. Nope. He put it all on me. I was in charge of training them on curriculum, which is so not in my job and my expertise. The team was horrible. They knew nothing and I got no help. Told my principal and was told, if you want to be a leader, you need to handle tough situations like this, with them smiling at me. This year, I've never been so burnt out. Anytime I asked for help, I got a "you can tough it out." I begged for any kind of help from anyone. My new team refused to do anything because it's easier if you do it. We're so stressed being new. This lasted for a whole school year. Imagine doing all the work for 5 people all at once, being treated like a whipping girl, and being told that I should expect this. Their students even came to me for help because their teachers did nothing in the classroom. My principal was so shocked when I said I was leaving. I told them that I had no help and I was not standing to be treated like this when I am still a fairly new teacher. He kept saying next year will be much better because my team has improved. No, they freaking haven't. I said, hell no. You allowed them to think I am there to do everything for them. Next year will be worse.